And at that meeting on the 8th of May, it was decided that the CXC exams should be held in the month of July. What was not determined as yet was the exact date. I am pleased to say that subsequent to these meetings, in fact, only on Wednesday of this week, we got written correspondence from CXC advising us that the proposal for the beginning of this examination was the 13th of July 2020. I took a note to Cabinet yesterday, and Cabinet was in agreement with the beginning of these exams on the 13th of July. And this is one of the fundamental issues that we need to share with you. Let me stress again, CXC is a regional examination body, and when all the ministers of education on behalf of their governments come to an agreement, we have to abide by the collective decision of the regional governments. It is therefore our collective responsibility to ensure that things are put in place so that our exams can start on the 13th of July. These exams will comprise a paper 1, which is multiple choice, and the school-based assessment. Of course, with respect to the school-based assessment, there will be an expanded moderation for all schools. Previous to this, as our CEO will explain, you had moderation that was done with concerning a select number of students from certain schools, but it has to be an expanded moderation. There are some subject areas where there are no SBAs, school-based assessments. And as a result, there will be a paper 2 for these subject areas. For example, modern languages, which include Spanish, French, and Portuguese, and human and social biology. For subjects like visual arts, students will be required to present a journal as part of their SBAs, or in fact, as a replacement of their SBAs. And again, this subject area will be visual arts. For physical education and sport, the assessment will be based on the written plans for the tournament rather than the tournament activities. Let me repeat this. For physical education and sport, that subject area, the assessment will be based on a written plan for the tournament rather than the tournament itself. The timetable for these examinations will be presented to us shortly. I want to make another point here. There has been, on one of the social media platforms, a suggested timetable which carries a lot of errors. We have informed CXC, and CXC has admitted that it was premature in sending out that timetable, and therefore the correct timetable will be sent out. So those persons who were in a bit of panic when they saw on social media a timetable that saw a number of subjects being duplicated, then we are telling them simply disregard that, and there will be a more authentic timetable sometime early next week. We at the Ministry of Education have been putting things in place to ensure that the examinations can run smoothly and any obstacle will be removed. There are issues that we have to deal with because, of course, we are doing everything in our power to ensure that our students and our teachers and all of those persons who assist in the examinations are not affected adversely. We have been working closely with the Ministry of Health, And we have received from the Ministry of Health certain requirements that must be put in place when our students and our teachers enter schools. And we'll be discussing that with you in a while. We have also ensured that personnel from our EFPPD department have been visiting our schools so that any problems with respect to infrastructural issues will be addressed so that those issues can be dealt with before these examinations. Our permanent secretary has been in touch with our denominational boards, in particular to ensure that their schools are properly sanitized and there is the required material so that all our schools will be able to be sanitized in accordance with the requirements of the Ministry of Health. I will ask also our permanent secretary to explain what has been done with respect to the efforts at ensuring that all our schools are properly sanitized, because that is one of the major areas of concern of the Ministry of Health. And of course, we have to listen and obey the instructions of the Ministry of Health. In terms of the preparation for the completion of the SBAs, since the SBA will require constant and diligent work on our students, we want to ensure that all our students are given the opportunity to produce an SBA of the highest quality. And as a result, we are reaching out to our teachers and to our principals, asking them to give support to our students so that the SBAs can be completed on time. CXC has decided to extend the deadline date for the submission of the SBAs. And that deadline date has been extended to the 30th of June. With this in mind, we have sent circulars to our principals in all our schools, asking them to give encouragement to our teachers and our students at ensuring that these SBAs assignments will be completed by our students on time. And therefore, during the period, the 7th of June to the 30th of June, we are asking our teachers, our subject teachers, to facilitate the completion of the SBAs by our students and give them as much support as possible. This might necessitate the teachers and students visiting the schools on occasions. Some teachers have been working, and I know from experience and from the information that we have been receiving, that a large number of teachers have been working online with our students at ensuring that the students complete the SBAs. And therefore, with those teachers in mind, they, if so required, will not have to attend to the schools with their students. But we have been told that there are many teachers who would prefer to have that face-to-face contact with the students, and we'll be encouraging them to visit the schools during the period 7th to the 30th of June. Again, if this has to be done, we have to make sure that the schools are in a condition that will ensure the safety of all of those. And the requirements of the Ministry of Health will be put in place so that we will reduce the risk of any of our students or teachers or anybody who operate on the school compound of being infected. I will now ask our Chief Education Officer to talk a little more with respect to the SBAs and other matters of a technical nature.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. With respect to the school-based assessments, as the Minister would have indicated, we have to do more than a sample this year. 100% of schools have to be moderated. So the ministry is taking steps to ensure that we have enough moderators to complete this process and to ensure that we abide by the requirements of CXC. And in order to facilitate this process, there will be a meeting, a regional meeting with CXC on the 3rd of June, at which any issues that may arise will be addressed. So we are depending on our local registrar and our curriculum division, who are in charge of that moderation process. We are depending on them to put forward any issues that have arisen or that they anticipate may arise, so that we will get clear directions from the CXC with respect to the moderation exercise. Once our students have completed their school-based assessments, their marks will be uploaded, and we will continue to do that moderation exercise. With respect to preparations for the entrance of our students back into school for the SBA process and for the exam, the ministry has sent out a circular which speaks to the physical infrastructure and the social distancing and other preparations which need to be taken in order to ensure the safety of our students. As well, the ministry has had discussions with the Ministry of Health, and they continue to guide us on these preparations. So, for example, our principals have been instructed that certain signage must be put in place, and the Ministry of Health is facilitating us with those signs. We have some of the information already, and we will be collaborating with our principals to ensure that they have those signs put up and prominently displayed. We have information on the cleaning and sanitizing, and as Minister would have indicated, our permanent secretary will give us additional information on what is the status of the provisions that the ministry has been making to facilitate. Our memo to our principals would have spoken to personal hygiene, and that they should, for example, instruct the students that they should not share supplies like pens and the usual school apparatus, that we should put up markers in areas where students may congregate. So, for example, in the washroom areas and in the halls that are not being used for exam purposes, we will have the signage to ensure that our students are socially distant, 6 to 10 feet from each other. Within our classrooms, we will ensure that the desks are so placed that our students will be safe. Now, one of the positive things is that we have the whole school, the entire school compound at our disposal, so we can spread the students out as necessary using as many classrooms as are required, and we are taking steps to ensure that we have the number of invigilators required to facilitate that process. We will have to put in place protocols for entry and exit, and so that we ensure that our students do not congregate, and so that we will put things in place so that there will be staggered entry and exit. All of the students will not be released at the same time, so that they will not gather at certain points. We have been making preparations with respect to the examinations unit, and that speaks to the hiring of the invigilators. So we have advertised on the ministry's website for invigilators, and we are taking steps to do a little more advertising in the newspapers so that we will have a pool of persons from which we can select our invigilators. Because of these COVID times, we are going to have training for these invigilators online, and we will, we will ensure that they are well trained. Minister would have indicated that our EFPPD division has been going to our schools to ensure that all the infrastructure is in place, that that the water works, for example, are functional. All our bathrooms are functional. Our teachers are also, our principals, are also doing assessments, and this information is being sent to the ministry as well as being uploaded onto our SIMS, that's the structural website, so that the AFPPD will get real-time data on any issues that may arise so that we can address them. Schools will also advise us if they need to provide, if they need the ministry to facilitate them with stations for hand sanitizers or additional sinks. We are in discussions also with the Ministry of Health to procure thermal scanners so that we can test our students as they come in. The Ministry of Health, in discussions with us, would have indicated that there must be a screening process for students as they come on the compound, just to ensure that within the past 2 weeks they have not had fevers or they have not had any flu-like symptoms, neither they or their family members. And the ministry will continue to work together. We have a lot of hard-working persons who, from the different divisions, who have come together and are taking all steps to ensure that in these unprecedented times, our exams come off as smoothly as possible. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Lisa Henry David, our new Chief Education Officer. I will now turn you over to our Permanent Secretary, Mrs. Lenore Batiste-Simmons.
Pleasant good morning, ladies and gentlemen, members of the media. The Ministry of Education would have commenced procurement procedures. We have awarded contracts for the cleaning supplies for our schools. From June 1st, we will begin receiving a number of items such as hand soap, disinfectant, hand sanitizers, additional toilet paper, and tissue that will be distributed to schools. These items will be distributed through our district offices to the schools. So we have commenced and we will be ready in terms of the sanitization of our secondary schools so that we would have a smooth operation in our schools. So along with what is happening through our EFPPD, where sinks will be placed on the external, we are also providing what is required for sanitization, as well as ensuring that personal hygiene is maintained at our secondary schools. Thank you. Minister.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen of the media, we now invite questions. Yes, sir.
Morning, everyone. Rashad Khan, Guardian Media. My first question to PS is, now you said that you all would be getting cleaning supplies and stuff. Could you go into a little bit more detail about the cleaning regiment? I mean, by the nature of these exams and students being in there, they would be sharing tables and stuff. So when one group finishes, they'll be sitting on another table. Does the cleaning regiment include this? And my second question to Minister Garcia. So I noticed you mentioned that teachers can come out to the schools from June 7th, right? Now, coincidentally, that is when the third phase of the reopening is scheduled or is suspected to begin, pending any further announcements. And by the way that these reopenings have been working is whenever there is a group that is set to come out to work, it's added to the public health regulations. So is it that teachers are now going to be added to that regulation to ensure that there isn't any confusion with the law? Or is it that you all are going to apply for an exemption for teachers to come out to the schools? Because as you would recall, last week, I believe it was, there was an incident where a school had to be closed because they had teachers and administrative staff out.
Okay. Right. Thank you for that question. The Ministry of Education would have set out the guidelines with respect to not only the cleaning of the school, but the conduct of the examinations. if a student is assigned to a desk and that person will be there for the entire day, we would not be cleaning continuously. But once a child sat an exam at that desk and gets up, the requirement is that it must be cleaned. Yes? And that we were told, at least we were told that students, because of the pressure of having to sit an exam, mask is not going to be a requirement. However, the invigilators who are moving among the students will be required to wear a mask in the examination rooms. So we have put, and again, the protocol. We also having, like, the public health inspectors will also be visiting our schools to ensure that we're working within the guidelines that have been established.
During the examination?
Not during, before. And in terms of we even have to submit our guidelines to be approved in terms of the continuous cleaning of rooms as well as the school.
Okay, let me respond to the second question that was asked. And that is with respect to teachers having to come out to school from the 7th of June. The first response I want to give is let you know that schools will officially open on the 1st of September 2020. So during this time, schools will be officially on vacation. We are asking teachers, in order to facilitate the completion of the SBAs by our students, to assist them by coming out of schools where it is necessary. But of course, this has to be coordinated with the principal to ensure that those groups do not comprise more than 5 at any time. And therefore, there will be no need to ask for any extended or any other facility to be extended to the teachers. Let me repeat, the school will be officially on vacation at that time, but to facilitate the completion of the SBAs by the students, teachers, where necessary, are encouraged to visit the schools with groups of students, and that group must not comprise more than 5 persons. Thank you. Yes.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Olive Gonzalez from Newsday. Minister Garcia, I would like to know what is in place if a teacher or a child presents flu-like symptoms on the school compound? And have you spoken to tutor about these new decisions, and what are some of the things that tutor is not in agreement with? And I would like to know what is the ministry doing to probably help teachers and tutor work around some of these issues. Thanks.
I think you have asked about 3 questions one time. I will ask our CEO to go over what she said just now with respect to if any child is suspected of having any flu-like ailment. I know she spoke about it just now, so I'm giving her the opportunity to reiterate exactly what she said.
So with respect to children presenting themselves on the compound, in accordance with the guidelines from the Ministry of Health, students will be screened once they present with symptoms. They would be placed in a secluded area, and steps will be taken to have them removed, and they will be allowed back on the compound if they have a medical. We are also, in our discussions with the Ministry of Health, we spoke about students who may have hay fever or allergies, about them possibly coming in with their medical, so that they will be able to present and say, I may be sneezing, but this is the reason why. But in terms of students presenting who do not have a medical that covers it, they will be secluded, and they will not be able to come back on unless they have a medical.
Okay, the third question. Let me answer the questions. The third question, whether we have spoken to tutor about it. We have taken pains to meet and speak with all our stakeholders. Of course, tutor is one of our major stakeholders, and we have been having constant meetings with tutor on this issue. I have also signaled to the national community that exams that are administered by CAPE, by CXC, Those exams will be in the month of July. Only last week, Friday, in Parliament, in response to a question that was raised by an opposition member of Parliament, I again reiterated the position that exams will be in July. The date wasn't yet confirmed, and it was only on Wednesday that the date was confirmed. I have a document here from the Association of Principals of Public Secondary Schools, and the subject is reopening of schools to facilitate completion and the moderation of SBAs and sitting of the July 2020 CXC exams. So this is evidence that we have been consulting with all our stakeholders where this is concerned.
Yes, Minister Garcia, I just want to circle back to the response that you gave a little bit earlier about saying that the teachers in the schools are now and understanding that this is only if they have to come out to the schools to deal with students that that they will not exceed the number of 5, right? Now, I'm just going to quote from the public health regulations here right now, the current one, which is the 15th iteration, which says that no person should be at any workplace unless that workplace is associated with a service specified in Subregulation 2. Subregulation 2 does not list schools or teachers as essential, as we say. So just take a look, let your legal department take a look at that.
All right, I'll tell you that our legal department already looked at it and pronounced on it. And education is a service to the community, a service to the country, and most important, a service to our students. And therefore, the legal advice that has been made available to us is that our schools constitute an essential service. Questions?
Good morning, Crystal Wilson, TTT Limited. Question for the Minister regarding theatre arts. I understand there's a practical component that for a lot of schools this has not been done, and that's because of the closure of the schools as a result of COVID-19. Can you all perhaps update on that, whether or not arrangements are being made for those practicals to take place?
Okay, although I mentioned that just now, I will ask our Chief Education Officer to say something on it.
With respect to theatre arts, it has been decided that instead of the actual presentation being judged, the children will be judged on the write-up for that presentation. So the actual performance will not take place.
And that is exactly what I said a few minutes ago. Yes?
Good morning. Vernex DeVore from 91.9 FM. Just a couple quick questions. One in particular, can we speak to what is going to happen to the technical students in the CVQ, those qualifications, how they are going to be treated with? And now that you've said that the school will reopen on the 1st of September, could you give us some details in terms of how that is going to proceed? Third term, first term, restart the school in January. I had mentioned it in passing at a previous press conference, but I'm not sure we have any confirmation on what will happen in September once schools reopen.
Okay, with respect to the CVQ, again, the CEO will answer that question.
Okay, so CXC has been in collaboration with CANTA. They've been in talks with CANTA, which is the body that adjudicates the CVQs. I understand that they're in the process of coming up with a position. That position has not been communicated to us as yet. So we wait upon CXC to tell us what is to happen with those examinations. So we ask you all to give us some time, and once that information is communicated to us, it will be disseminated.
Yes? Good. I began this media conference by stating emphatically that we are discussing the examinations that are administered by CXC. I would like us to stick to that. The fact that I made mention that schools will reopen on the 1st of September, that was only incidental. This media conference is to focus only on what is happening with respect to those two important examinations that are administered by CXC. We will talk to you a little more because we have a number of things to decide upon which are still under discussion at the Ministry of Education and also at the level of Cabinet. So at this point, again, let me reiterate, we want to stick to discussing matters pertaining to CSEC exam and CAPE exams. Thank you.
All right, sorry, if I could redirect then. With respect to teachers actually providing support for students in secondary schools preparing for these exams, because I guess we could admit that the students will now have just about a month to prepare, considering the 13th of July is when we're looking at. What is in place from the ministry? Is it that the ministry is asking teachers to provide the support, or is it going to be a mandatory support that the teachers have to supply? Or can tutor and their teachers say, well, we are not going above and beyond because we haven't gotten laptops, we don't have Wi-Fi, there are various complaints, or is something being done from a ministry perspective to make sure the students have the support? Because it didn't seem like it was mandatory support from teachers to students.
I was very careful in my choice of words when I was speaking a little while ago. We are encouraging our teachers to lend the support to our students. We are not telling our teachers that they have to do this. Bearing in mind that from the 1st of July or the 3rd of July, teachers will be on their vacation. That is a matter, if we have to change anything where that is concerned, must be discussed with the representative union. And this is why all along we are careful to say that there are teachers who are working on their own volition with the students, but we are giving them as much encouragement as possible. The information that is available to us at the Ministry of Education simply states that there are thousands of our teachers who have taken up the mantle and are working with our students. In fact, if we examine one of our platforms, the LMS, it tells us that in excess of 4,500 teachers have been accessing that platform and they are working voluntarily with our students. Questions?
Hi, good morning. Praya Bihari, SBNews.com. Minister, I wanted to find out, why is it all of the examinations didn't have included a paper 2? Because many people feel a paper 2 gives a better assessment of the student. That is a question.
We went through this over and over again. CXC is a regional examination body. CXC thought it wise and important to meet with all the ministers of education within the region. And that meeting was facilitated by Kushad. At that meeting, every minister of education had the opportunity to state the position of their respective governments and their respective ministries. You would know, as was reported in the media, that there were 2 territories who had some concerns. One of those territories was Trinidad and Tobago. And I was given the opportunity to put forward the case of the ministry and of the government of Trinidad and Tobago. But as I have been saying over and over, it is a regional exam. And we have to stick to the decision that has been taken by the ministers of education in the region. There is an element of collective responsibility that we must adhere to. And therefore we can't break ranks and go our separate ways. And this is why, in spite of the fact that we might have had some differences where this is concerned, we are going along in the interest of regional unity. I want to make the point also that all is not lost, because with respect to CAPE, there are 2 units, Unit 1 and Unit 2. And we are hoping that this pandemic does not go beyond a few months, so that even students in lower 6 who are doing CAPE and will have an exam without Unit 2, without Paper 2. When they move on to Upper 6, where they will do Unit 2 in those particular exams, we are hoping that they will have the opportunity of writing a Paper 2. Those students who are in Upper 6 already had the opportunity of writing a Paper 2. So all is not lost. Any other question? This meeting is to discuss the exams, CSEC, and the CAPE. Yesterday, we met with tutor with respect to SEA, and at this point, I am not in a position to divulge any information as yet.
Hi, Minister. Carissa Lee from CNC3. My first question would be, you said that the timetable that is on social media has some errors. You said a date will be announced. Do we have any idea? You said a date, it will be sent out. Do we have any idea as to when that date will be for the timetable, as well as?
All right. Our local registrar was instructed yesterday to contact CXC administration, pointing out to them these errors and the fact that this timetable was not officially sanctioned. The response that we got was yes, our local registrar was correct, and in fact, other registrars from other territories in the Caribbean made similar complaints. CXC has informed us that in the not too distant future, and we are hoping that perhaps by Tuesday or Wednesday next week, we are going to have a timetable or timetables that are correct.
And my next question would be, as the exam is set to start on July 13th, you said a number of schools would be sanitized, we'd have a number of PPE, that kind of thing. Can you tell me how much that will cost us, cost the country?
Okay, our PS, who is our Chief Accounting Officer, will answer that.
The ministry would have received funding through the Ministry of Finance, and for the secondary school, but it's for all schools. It came up to roughly around 6 million. Yes. But in terms of the secondary schools, we have not disaggregated the cost because we would have bought in bulk so that we can distribute to all our schools. I said all schools, sorry, primary and secondary schools and ECC centers. Yeah.
And I just have one more question for the Minister in relation to, I know you said this meeting, this press conference is to discuss CAPE and CSEC. Can you give us a date as to when you'd be able to talk about SEA? Because we have a number of questions in relation to that.
I am hoping that perhaps before the end of next week, we'll be in a position. As I said before, we met with tutor yesterday, and we discussed certain proposals. Tutor told us they have to get back to the General Council, and once the General Council gives them direction, they'll get back to us, and we'll make a determination.
Just one quick thing, Minister. I have a parent who listened to the radio station adamantly, and they said, what provisions or support will be in place for children who come from less fortunate homes because they require the school transport and maybe school feeding when the children go out to school for exams? Has that been considered, and will they be able to expect some help in transport and food at schools when they go out?
All right, again, I don't want us to confuse the issues. The issue that we are focusing now on are the examinations, CSEC and CAPE. That will not require the attendance of all the students in our school system. It will require the attendance of students in Forms 5 and Form 6. So it isn't all our students. We have in excess of 250,000 students in the school system. However, in case of CSEC and CAPE, we might have about 36,000 students, or about 30,000 students will be writing those exams in standards in Forms 5 and Forms 6, about 30,000 students. So it isn't all. But anyway, to zero in directly on your question, we are looking at this. In fact, not only are we looking at it, we have been putting things in place to ensure that we provide as much sustenance and assistance to those who are deprived. And we have done this in so many ways. One is by making sure that we have our online platforms that can be accessed really by our students and our teachers. And again, the information that we have received would tell us that in excess of 125,000 of our students have been able to access that platform. We will be distributing laptops. I didn't want to go into this right now, but the Permanent Secretary was discussing with me only this morning that we now have ready the instrument that would allow our teachers to access the laptops with all the legal implications. So we have put a number of things in place. We cannot ensure that every child will be given a laptop or that every child will have an equal opportunity. We are not sure of that, but we are doing everything to make sure on our part where we are concerned that no child is left behind. It is our philosophy that in meting out education to our students, all 250,000 students in our school system, that everything must be done so that no child is left behind. It is unfortunate that sometimes some of our students will fall outside of that. And this is why in this Ministry of Education, we have a Student Support Services Division. And again, only this morning before we came to this media conference, the Permanent Secretary and my advisor, we were meeting with the director of that department to ensure that the students that you are referring to are given every opportunity to access the quality education that we are determined to provide.
One, two, yeah. RIPS, just a clarification, right? You said that you all were in the process of acquiring thermal scanners and stuff for students to be tested when they're coming, right? Now, is that for the exams or is that for when teachers and students may be availing themselves of the school to prepare the SBs?
The use of thermal scanners will be for both, for the schools with the SBAs as well as for those who will be entering the compound for the examinations.
Okay.
But what we were told by the ministry is that we may not get accurate readings because the heat, basically it's humid, the humidity. And if the students are walking and the teachers, we would have to take that into consideration. But we are looking for heightened temperatures, but we're also doing the screening to ensure that we are ensuring that it's free of any flu or any flu-like symptoms and everything.
Okay, who would be responsible for doing these tests? Is it going to be the security? Is it going to be members of staff? Who is going to be responsible for conducting these tests?
Again, I would have to ask the CEO.
Okay. I'll handle this question. Again, we have been in discussion with our technical persons and our Director of School Supervision where this is concerned, and we are working out protocols that will allow the smooth functioning of this important issue. So again, before the end of the week, we'll be able to come up with the necessary protocols to ensure that this thing is handled properly.
Just one more question from me, sorry, Crystal. A question came in, and the person wants to know who would be responsible for uploading the SBs to CXC. Would it be the teachers?
SBA matters are being addressed by our CEO.
As normal, the teachers are responsible for uploading.
Okay, we'll take one more question. Yes, miss?
This question concerns music exams and music paper 2. I'm not sure if that has been mentioned before, but what are the arrangements being made? I understand that's the performance aspect. And if I'd be permitted, just one more question. In terms of French and Spanish orals, how is that going to work in terms of social distancing?
Lisa?
Okay. I'll start with your last question first. With respect to orals, we recognize that there may be some issues So we have come up with some protocols, and we will be running those by CXC when we have the meeting next on June 3rd to see how we can ensure that everyone is safe, but that the students feel that they are able to give of their best. Because we know some students may be shy, but we have to observe the social distancing, for example, so that they would have to keep the regulated distance apart to facilitate the orals. And in terms of handling the materials, we are looking at some sort of facility for maybe laminating or so that the materials can be cleaned from when moving from one person to the next, or probably having more copies done. But we'll sort those things out with CXC when we meet with them on the 3rd of June. With respect to music, I know that the moderation will take place on site, but there has not been a change in how music will be administered.
Let me assist you with that as concerned. I have been in constant conversations with regional ministers of education. Only this morning I got in contact with the Minister of Education in Antigua. All of these issues we are discussing in an effort to provide one unified position to CXC. With respect to music, that is an area that is of concern to all of us as ministers of education, and we already approached CXC where this is concerned, but we have not had any final determination where that is concerned. So again, that is an issue that we are hoping will be resolved before the end of this week. Okay, I want to thank you very much. I want to thank, I've received a signal that we have to wind it up, and as a good student, I have to obey, right? I want to thank all our stakeholders who have been really assisting us in ensuring that our children are adequately catered for. I want to thank you, members of the media, for being here and for the participation that we have had this morning. Thank you very much.